The Chen family reunion happened every 3 years at Uncle Robert's sprawling estate in Marin County. 47 relatives gathering to celebrate success, compare achievements, and subtly compete over who had climbed highest since the last gathering. I'd been dreading this weekend for months. My brother Marcus had arrived Friday evening in his leased BMW, immediately launching into stories about his promotion to regional sales manager at a mid-tier consulting firm. The salary bump had inflated his ego beyond recognition. He'd spent the entire evening making pointed comments about my little computer hobby and how I still lived in my starter apartment at 28. Some people peak in college, he'd announced during dinner, cutting his prime rib with theatrical precision. Others learn to adapt to reality. I'd said nothing, just smiled and helped Aunt Linda clear plates. Marcus had always been the golden child. High school quarterback, business degree from a decent state school, the kind of conventional success that made relatives nod approvingly. He drove the right car, wore the right suits, dated women who looked good in family photos. Me. I was the quiet one. Computer science degree, worked from home, kept to myself. At family gatherings I was the afterthought. The one they'd ask about last with polite but dismissive interest. Still doing the computer thing? They'd say, the way you might ask about a child's imaginary friend. What they didn't know was that 3 years ago, I'd started a small software company from my bedroom. A specialized cybersecurity platform that could predict and prevent data breaches before they happened. I'd been working 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination, while Marcus posted LinkedIn updates about his quarterly sales numbers. The breakthrough came 18 months ago. A Fortune 500 company had a massive security incident, and my software was the only thing that detected it in time. Word spread quietly through the industry. More clients came, then bigger clients, then government contracts. 6 months ago I'd sold the company to a tech giant for an amount that made my accountant stutter. But I'd kept the news private. No social media announcements, no family updates. Just me, my lawyers, and a bank account that had gained several commas. I'd planned to tell them eventually. Maybe at this reunion if the moment felt right. Marcus, however, had other plans. Saturday afternoon found us in Uncle Robert's great room, the entire extended family scattered across leather couches and Persian rugs. The cousins were sharing career updates while the older generation half listened, nursing drinks and commenting on everyone's life choices. Marcus held court near the massive stone fireplace, regaling everyone with his latest business trip to Denver and the major client he'd landed. The contract was worth $50,000, which he mentioned 3 times. Of course, not everyone can handle high-stakes sales, he said, his eyes finding me across the room. It takes a certain personality type. Confidence. Aggression. The killer instinct. Cousin Jenny, fresh from her residency, nodded politely. Cousin David, who'd just made partner at his law firm, made appropriate impressed sounds. Sarah's still doing her computer thing, Marcus continued, his tone shifting to that special blend of condescension and pity that older siblings perfect. Working from home, living the dream of never having to wear real pants. A few relatives chuckled. Uncle Robert raised an eyebrow. Nothing wrong with that, Aunt Linda said diplomatically. Everyone finds their own path. Absolutely, Marcus agreed, his smile sharp. Some paths just lead further than others. I mean, Sarah's been at this for what, 3 years now? Still in that same little apartment, still driving that Honda. But hey, minimum wage for life is perfectly respectable. The room went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet where people are impressed. The awkward kind where everyone suddenly finds their drinks fascinating. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Not from embarrassment but from anger. 3 years of building something from nothing, of solving problems these people couldn't even comprehend, reduced to minimum wage for life, in front of the entire family. Actually, I started to say, but Marcus wasn't finished. I keep telling her she should get into sales, he continued, warming to his theme. Something with real growth potential. Real money. But you know Sarah. Always been content with small dreams. Haven't you, sis? The condescension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Cousin David looked uncomfortable. Even Uncle Robert, who loved a good success story, seemed to sense this had crossed a line. But before I could respond, the universe intervened. The massive flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace suddenly flickered to life. Uncle Robert had left it on the financial news channel, volume low, providing background noise for the gathering. But now the volume seemed to surge and a familiar logo filled the screen. Forbes. Breaking news banner. And then the words that would change everything. Tech billionaire Chen tops Forbes under 30 list with $1.2 billion net worth from cybersecurity startup sale. The room went silent. Not awkward silent this time. Dead silent. Marcus's voice died mid-sentence, his hand frozen halfway to his drink. Every head in the room swiveled between the television and me, processing what they'd just heard. The Forbes reporter continued. Chen, 28, sold her company CyberShield to tech giant Nexus Corporation for $1.2 billion in cash and stock options. The San Francisco-based entrepreneur started the company from her apartment just 3 years ago, developing breakthrough AI-powered cybersecurity software that has revolutionized data protection for Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. My photo appeared on screen. A professional headshot from the Forbes photo shoot I'd done last month. Wearing a simple black blazer, looking directly at the camera with quiet confidence. Chen's success represents one of the fastest wealth accumulations in tech history, the reporter continued. Her software prevented over $50 billion in potential cyber attacks last year alone. She joins an elite group of self-made billionaires who achieved their fortune before age 30. Marcus's drink slipped from his hand, ice cubes scattering across Uncle Robert's hardwood floor. Cousin Jenny's mouth hung open. David had gone pale. Aunt Linda pressed her hand to her chest. Uncle Robert pointed at the screen, then at me, his finger trembling slightly. That's you. I nodded calmly. Yes. The silence stretched another beat. Then chaos. Sarah. Aunt Linda shrieked. That's our Sarah? Billion with a B? David whispered. The apartment, Jenny said slowly. The Honda. You've been living below my means, I finished. Yes. Marcus still hadn't moved. His face had gone through several color changes, settling on a sickly green. Uncle Robert struggled to his feet, his drink forgotten. Sarah, honey, why didn't you tell us? I was planning to, I said. Eventually. I wanted to wait until the paperwork was fully settled. Paperwork, he repeated faintly. The TV continued its coverage, showing footage of my company's headquarters, interviews with clients praising the software, stock market reactions to the acquisition announcement. The sale makes Chen one of the youngest female billionaires in history, the reporter noted. She plans to use her wealth to fund cybersecurity education programs for underserved communities. Marcus finally found his voice. It came out as a croak. Sarah. When did? 3 years ago, I said quietly. When I started my little computer hobby, from my starter apartment. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in Uncle Robert's abandoned scotch. What followed was perhaps the most surreal hour of my life. Suddenly, I was the center of attention in a way I'd never experienced. Every cousin wanted to know about the company. Every aunt needed to hear the story. Every uncle had questions about investments and market conditions. Marcus sat in stunned silence, occasionally opening his mouth like a fish gasping for air, then closing it again. The Forbes interview, Cousin Jenny said, scrolling through her phone. It's everywhere. CNN, Bloomberg, TechCrunch. Sarah, you're famous. Infamous more like, I said. I preferred being anonymous. But the money, David said, still processing. $1 billion. That's generational wealth. Uncle Robert had poured himself another drink. A larger one. Sarah, honey, I have to ask. The apartment, the car, the way you've been living. I like my apartment, I said. And the Honda's reliable. Money doesn't have to change everything. But Marcus said. Aunt Linda started, then stopped, glancing at my brother. Marcus had finally managed to close his mouth. His face was cycling through emotions. Shock, embarrassment, what looked like anger, then something that might have been fear. I didn't know, he said finally. Sir, I had no idea. Thought, the computer thing? I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you never asked, I said calmly. You assumed. You decided what my life looked like based on external appearances, then spent 3 years mocking those assumptions. The room shifted uncomfortably. Several relatives suddenly found their phones very interesting. I mean, if I'd known you were successful. Marcus started. You'd have treated me differently, I finished. Yes. That's exactly the problem. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Well, I think this calls for a toast. Actually, I said, standing up, I think this calls for me to leave. The protest started immediately. Stay for dinner. Tell us more about the company. Explain how cybersecurity works. Share your investment strategies. But I was done. 3 years of condescension couldn't be erased by one news report. The damage was already done, the relationships already poisoned by years of dismissive treatment. The funny thing is, I said, gathering my jacket, I came here planning to tell you all about the sale. I thought it would be nice to share good news with family. Marcus looked up at me, something desperate in his eyes. Sarah, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said. And that's fine. You showed me exactly where I stand in this family. Minimum wage for life, remember? I walked toward the door, the entire room watching in silence. Sarah, Uncle Robert called. Don't leave like this. I paused at the threshold. You know what the strangest part is? I would have been happy to help. Fund Marcus's business dreams, pay for the cousin's student loans, help with medical bills or house down payments. That's what family does, right? The silence was deafening. But you can't build relationships on assumptions and condescension, then expect generosity when the truth comes out. I moved to a beautiful house in Palo Alto. Still modest by billionaire standards, but it has a home office with proper lighting and space for the nonprofit I'm starting. The Cybersecurity Education Foundation launched last month. We're funding computer science programs in underserved communities, teaching kids that technology can be a path to independence and success. Marcus has called 17 times. Aunt Linda sends regular emails with family updates and subtle hints about visiting. Uncle Robert invited me to his birthday party with the promise that he'd make sure everyone treats you with the respect you deserve. I haven't responded to any of them. The truth is, I didn't become successful for revenge. I built something I believed in, solved problems that mattered, and created value for people who needed it. The money was a byproduct, not the goal. But respect? That should have been unconditional. It shouldn't require a Forbes announcement to see someone's worth. These days I'm building new relationships. Professional contacts who became friends. Mentors who see potential. A community of entrepreneurs who understand the journey. People who knew my worth before they knew my net worth. That's the real fortune. Everything else is just numbers on a screen. Marcus sent another voicemail yesterday. He started his own consulting firm and wondered if I might consider investing. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Some bridges once burned are meant to stay that way.